Always out times real hard.
A 60-year-old woman would be home alone one day in her Ohio house when suddenly a knock came to her door. This would be the beginning of a terrifying chain of events where an older couple would be terrorized for nearly a decade. Hello, true crimeers. This is the still unsolved mysteries case of Bill and Dorothy Wacker. Viewer discretion is advised. Now, this story originally aired on Unsolved Mysteries on May 25th, 1994, and it was the 24th episode of Season 6. William Wacker, who would go by Bill to everyone in his life, he was born on March 12th, 1920, in Massillon, Ohio. He would go on to become a private first class in the United States Army. He would proudly serve in World War II. And then at some point in his life, he would meet Dorothy Jean Young. Dorothy was born on April 21st, 1927, also in Massillon, Ohio. The two of them would, I guess, meet in their, teenage, early 20s, something like that. And they started to court each other. They dated. They fell head over heels in love with one another. And then they would get married. I don't know exactly when, because that date's not listed, but I think it was sometime in the early 50s when they actually got married. They would then go on to have at least 2 children that I am aware of. I know they had 2 daughters, but I don't know if they had any more children other than that. Bill and Dorothy seem to be like the poster child, if you will, for what a nearly perfect marriage looks like. They were a super quiet, peaceful, unassuming couple who just lived their lives. They did not get involved in much. They never had enemies. They didn't, ruffle anyone's feathers. There was never, affairs, never any, abuse. It was just they were just your typical all-American, 50s and 60s and 70s married couple. They were kind of a staple in their community, and everyone seemed to love them. Like I said, they never really made anyone mad. They lived in their home in the Stark County, Ohio area for pretty much the majority of their 48-year marriage and kept the house in great condition. They just kind of just existed. Just Bill and Dorothy Wacker living a happy married life. Which makes the events that started in 1984 that much more mysterious. Like I said, they lived in this house for the majority of their 48-year marriage. They raised their family in this house. This was their sanctuary. This was their castle. In 1984, Bill would be about 64 years old. Dorothy was about 57, 58 years old. In 1984, on 2 separate occasions, they would kind of go out, do some shopping, or go visit some family, whatever the case may be, and then they would come home. And like I said, on 2 occasions, they would walk back into their house, and the house was just torn to pieces. It was ransacked. Someone had broken into their home and just made an absolute mess of the place. All the cabinets and the drawers were open. It appeared that someone had broken in with the intent of stealing things. If anything was stolen in those first 2 events, I'm not sure, because that's not information that's listed anywhere. So, even though this happened once and then it happened again, they did not tell police or go to the sheriff's department about this. They were like, it's probably just some stupid kids or something, who knows. But then, on January 16th, 1985, it happened again. At this point, they're fed up. Even if this is some stupid kids doing some stupid pranks, they want it to stop because they're messing up their home. They filed a police report. Police did confirm that they looked at the house and yep, it certainly was ransacked. I don't know if this third time if anything was stolen either. That information again is not listed. What was clear was that Bill and Dorothy are being targeted. For what reason, though? That's unknown. But Bill, when he was interviewed in the 1994 episode of Unsolved Mysteries, he said this. Oh, could someone be trying to scare Bill and Dorothy out of this house? Did someone want this house? Maybe. Possibly. Who is that person? Unknown. Why would they want to do this all of a sudden? Unknown. Just a theory. Just a speculation. You know, the police report was filed, but the investigation, it never really got off the ground because in their, evidence collecting, there wasn't any fingerprints found that weren't Dorothy and Bill's. There wasn't any evidence left behind by whoever did this. They came in and out like a ghost. There were no witnesses. No one saw anyone prowling around the house during any of these events. So police had zilch to go on. And then in July of 1985, it escalated. Dorothy, who was about 58 years old at this time, in July of 1985, she is home alone. And Bill was out of the house. Maybe he was at work, but I'm not 100% sure where he was. She was sort of just doing some work in the kitchen when all of a sudden she heard a knock on the door. Dorothy went to the door, she opened it, and standing before her was a young man. He was standing on her porch, and he very politely asked Dorothy, "Can I please use your phone? My car broke down, and I need to call someone." Dorothy looks out. She doesn't see his vehicle at all, anywhere out front. So she says, "Well, where's your car?" And he's like, "Oh, it broke down, just down the street. You can't see it from here." This is 1985. Times were different. People, again, were more trusting in the 80s. So Dorothy, being the generous and kind person that she is, lets the man inside the house and shows him where the phone is. She goes back to the kitchen, and she is now out of sight of this man. She does hear him pick up the phone. She hears him dialing. She hears him talking and asking for a tow truck. She then hears him after a few minutes putting the phone down. He then says, "Thank you so much, ma'am. Goodbye." She says, "Oh, you're welcome. Goodbye." She hears the door open and close, so she assumes he's gone. And then all of a sudden, she never sees it coming, but she is then smashed over the head with something. And she blacked out. When Dorothy finally came to, she was on the floor of her kitchen, and she was basically hogtied. She was tied up pretty securely. She was also gagged. It also appeared that the house had been ransacked again. Dorothy manages to basically crawl and scoot her way out of her house, and she kind of crawls to her neighbor's house. And she manages to get the attention of her neighbor, and her neighbor can confirm Dorothy was basically hogtied. She was tied up with her hands behind her back, and her feet were tied and all that, so she was tied up. And this was all done in a way that Dorothy more than likely could not have done this herself. Just in case anyone asks at all at any point in this video, there's just no way she would have been able to do this. When Bill arrived, there were already cops in an ambulance outside, and he goes immediately to console his wife and tend to her, make sure she's okay. And then police ask him, "Hey, can you please look around the house and see if anything was taken?" And this time, he confirms there were several items missing. His .22 caliber revolver was missing. He was missing an antique watch. A video camera was gone. And he also had a radio scanner that was also taken. And then, in the dining room, written on the wall in crayon, was a message. That message read, "Cheaper, but will do." It is very unclear what that message even means. It's not a full sentence. It's not saying what's cheaper. It's not saying what will do. It's very bizarre message. So, police begin to try to investigate this, and again, they get nowhere. There is just no witnesses. No one sees a thing. No one sees any person. They got nothing. And fast forward to November of 1985, Bill is coming home from somewhere, and as he walks up his porch, he sees a plastic grocery bag just sort of lying in the middle of the porch. When he goes to grab it and look inside, it's his .22 caliber revolver. The person who stole it returned it, which is very unusual, according to the police. Then, one at a time, over the next several months, the items that were stolen are all returned back to the porch in similar fashion that the gun was, and they get everything back. Now, police take all of the items, the gun, the radio, the camera, all of it, the bags they came in, they dust them all for fingerprints, they check everything they can for fingerprints, nothing. Completely clean. It is very, very weird. It's almost as if, kind of to me, like this was just them sending a message, like this never was about stealing from you. So, it's that's why it's weird and it's creepy. Definitely. I mean, was this about scaring them? Was this just a game to this person? But again, for what reason? And why this couple? Why them? Why the Wackers? It makes no sense. It's so bizarre. The harassment continues. Just keeps on going for years. It would happen in spurts. Like, you would get a whole bunch of stuff going on within like a month or two. And then it goes dormant for like 3, 4, 5 months. Then it comes back. There's no consistency to this harassment at all. The next round of terror that would be inflicted upon Bill and Dorothy would come in the form of phone calls. Their phone would ring several times throughout the day, and it would always be at random times. They were never consistent with which time they called. It would be the morning, the afternoon, the evening, just seemed to be completely random. And sometimes they would just get calls of heavy breathing. Other times, they would be threatened. Violently threatened. Dorothy answered the phone one time and the man told her, "I'll hit your head harder next time." A lot of stuff like that. Just very, detailed threats about what I'm going to do to you. Sometimes they would just scream at them, scream obscenities and just kind of cuss them out. Or sometimes it would just be laughing in the background. Disturbing as hell. The Wackers changed their phone number multiple times. But the harasser always seemed to find the new number. They called back every time they changed the number. They still called. Now we're getting a little suspicious because not many people would know this information. What I don't know is, I don't know if police ever tried to trace these phone calls, if they even attempted. But from what it sounds like, the phone calls never lasted more than 15, 20 seconds, which, back in the 80s, it would take longer than that to trace a call. So it's almost like the caller would know to just hang up the phone after a certain time. Then the next layer of hell began. And this is something from the movie The Strangers and some creepy shit like that. Bill and Dorothy would be asleep in their room in the middle of the night when they start hearing knock, knock, knock on their door. And then they would go to, swing open the door, see who was there. No one. But then it would go beyond just the door. Then, other times, these people or this person would run around the house, banging on the walls of the house and smacking the windows, knocking on the doors, just going around the perimeter of the house. And before anyone can get down and see what the hell was going on, the person would be gone. That's like a nightmare to me. I would piss my pants, to be honest with you. If that shit was happening to me, I wouldn't be able to tolerate it. But this would lead Bill to install security motion sensor lights, mainly on the front of the house. And literally, the morning after he installed those lights, he walks out onto the porch, and sticking out from a crack on the porch planks was a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper was a scribbled note with really poor handwriting. That note said, "Your lights are a laugh." Also said, "Sunday didn't do you in. Next time. Called but didn't answer." And then the notes became the next thing that would happen. So they're still getting phone calls. They're still getting people rapping on their walls and their doors in the middle of the night. But now they're adding the layer of notes. Another note would say, "You scum, I'll get even. No junk this time. Ha ha." So police would gather these notes every time they got them. They would test them all for fingerprints, for any trace evidence. Nothing. The police would basically come to the conclusion that these notes appeared to be written by the writer's non-dominant hand. That, so if they were a right-handed person, they were using their left hand to write the notes in order to disguise their handwriting, as if they know police may want to look at certain people's handwriting to see who wrote these. The calls, the notes, the knocking, the threats just kept on going for close to a decade. The next physical attack came on October 27th, 1993. It was nighttime at this point, and Dorothy had taken their dog out to the backyard. The dog was never harmed, by the way. She took the dog out to the backyard and just to let the dog do its business. And someone snuck into their backyard, hopped the fence or something along those lines, crept up behind Dorothy and bashed her over the head and knocked her out again. Bill would realize this fairly quickly. When he got down there, the person was gone, but there was blood coming out of Dorothy's head. So she was rushed to the nearby Affinity Medical Center, where she had to get stitches because she had actual skull lacerations. So this was an actual attack, again, with more documents from police and medical professionals that can confirm, yes, she had, not only does she have actual skull lacerations that a person wouldn't just do to themselves, but she also was suffering a concussion. So it was very real what happened. And it also kind of helps prove to anyone out there who had been thinking maybe Dorothy was doing this to herself for attention. It kind of pushed that to the side because she wouldn't do that. Or I should say, she wouldn't have been able to do that. And then police began to say, "Bill, what about you, bud? Maybe it's you who's doing this." As you heard, they found that to be absurd. First of all, Dorothy had been face to face with her attacker back in 1985, and she talked to this person this close, right? She saw him. It was a man in his early 20s. He had blonde hair, blue eyes. He was about 5'9". A description that did not match Bill whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, back in 1985, they used the description and they made a composite drawing, which circulated throughout the entire area through the media. And they kind of kept showing that image throughout the years just to kind of see if anyone has any information. They put that image back out again when this next physical attack happened, but nobody recognized the person. No one has ever come forward to say anything about this man. Maybe Bill hired someone to do it. Okay, but why? There was no motive for him to do anything like this. He was not gaining anything. He got nothing out of it. There was no financial gain for him. There's no life insurance policies in this situation. There's nothing for Bill. So why would he do this? It makes no sense. Why would he want to physically harm his wife and scare her? The first attack, by the way, that happened in 1985, she had just gotten done with heart surgery. So she was at home recovering from heart surgery. So it would take a monster of a husband to do something like that, to attack her just after something like heart surgery. So it seems absurd to me that this man in his mid-60s would be doing stuff like this to his wife for no reason. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just not seeing proof to say, why he would do this. At any rate, in November of 1993, just a month or so after Dorothy was attacked, Bill hatched a plan. Basically, they were going to do a stakeout of their own home. So they got 4 members of their family, so there were 6 people in total doing this, and they would break up into 3 teams of 2 people. Bill and another individual were hiding in a camper that was parked on the driveway. And then Bill and Dorothy's 2 of their son-in-laws, they were parked in a van across the street and kind of down a ways so that no one would look suspicious. And this was at night, so it was dark. And then Dorothy and one of her daughters was in the living room of the house. They all had 2-way radios, so they were communicating with one another. They were all within distance. If anything happened, they can get there really quickly. They sat there for hours and hours, and nothing happened. No one showed up that they were aware of, that they saw, I should say. There were no phone calls. That is until the very, very end, when Dorothy and her daughter heard boom, 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 boom on the porch, as if someone had thrown something onto the porch and it rolled. And so she said, there's noise on the porch. And again, it's dark outside. There's not very good street lights at this point, from what I understand. They all kind of rush towards the porch. Lo and behold, there's like a rock on there, and there's a note attached to it. So this person somehow managed to sneak past everyone who has their eyes on the house and throw a note onto the porch. This note simply said, "Get the message." And no one saw a person come by the house. No one saw anything. How on earth did this person manage to get a note onto the porch with 6 people watching the house? Police, who still had suspicions on Bill, also suspected this could be a neighbor doing it. Maybe a neighbor who had unspoken issues with the Wackers. Maybe this neighbor has never, confronted them or approached them, but maybe they're pissed off about something. Maybe this is a friend. Could be a family member. Because again, every time the Wackers changed their phone number, the harasser still managed to know the number. And only a certain amount of people would know that they changed the numbers and would even know the actual new numbers themselves. This harasser knew the comings and goings of Bill and Dorothy. They knew their schedule. So it makes sense that whoever is doing this was someone in their lives to some capacity. But who that person is, or who those people are, could be more than one person, to this very day, is still an unsolved mystery. The last reported event was the get the message note after the stakeout. It may have continued on beyond that, but police never had any reports filed about any continued harassment. On July 9th, 1999, Bill Wacker passed away at the age of 79. And then on July 22nd, 2010, Dorothy Wacker passed away at the age of 83. Both died never knowing who this harasser was. Both died never knowing who was tormenting them for 10 years. And both died never knowing why. What we do know as people is that these events did happen. The notes were real. The calls occurred. The attacks, the physical attacks, they did happen. It's just a matter of knowing who and why. Again, police themselves saw the ransacked house, saw the injuries to Dorothy. Witnesses saw Dorothy tied up. It happened. But is it mysterious? Or is it someone close to home? Could it have been Bill and Dorothy doing all of this? Maybe. But why would they do this? Why? As some kind of like cheap ploy to be noticed? It doesn't make any, not for a couple who's married for 48 years, they're in their 60s, like that would be stupid. Like, come on. If it was just Bill, again, he gained nothing from this, ever. I think that this all did happen the way the Wackers said it happened. I think they were victims of some kind of harassment. It's just a matter of who and why. Again, there's no motives here. They can't determine a motive. No one ever called or demanded money. No money was ever exchanged. There was no affairs, so this wasn't like a jilted lover. Maybe someone just simply hated the Wackers for some unknown reason and wanted to torture them. Maybe this person is just a random, deranged psychopath stranger who didn't know them at all. Maybe the stranger wanted some kind of fame and notoriety for these actions. And that didn't ever happen, really. I mean, the case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, and nothing ever came from it. They never got tips or anything. But this never was like a national headline story. This never rose to the level of, like, let's make a movie and a TV show off of it. This does have very similar traits to the Watcher case, which the Watcher was turned into a Netflix series, which took a lot of liberties and kind of added a lot more to it than that actually happened, but very similar, because in that situation, you know, this family had bought a new house, and they started getting these really detailed, you know, notes from someone calling themselves the Watcher and saying things like, you know, I know you have kids, and like, it was very creepy. That person's never been caught. So very, very similar. The difference being is that in that case, the Watcher was successful in getting the people, that family, to just be done with that house. Whereas the Wackers never left their home. Even after all of it, they stayed around. It was their house, their sanctuary, and you weren't going to scare them away. This is a truly baffling, to me, a seriously creepy, and a crazy, bizarre, unsolved mystery. If you have any information about who was tormenting Bill and Dorothy Wacker, I'm sure not much really legal at this point could happen. We're probably well past the point of any kind of statute of limitations and all that. But if you have any information to provide that would shed light on this story, you can contact the local authorities there in the Massillon, Ohio area, just to kind of close the book on this. What do you all think? Real? Fake? Stranger? Family member? Friend? Neighbor? Was it Bill? Was it Bill and Dorothy? Was it just Dorothy? What do y'all think? It's crazy. But that is it for this case, True Crime Maroonies. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you have tripped, fallen, stumbled your way, and received creepy letters to get you to this video, hey, stick around, huh? That wasn't very welcoming, but stick around, give me a subscribe, like the video, please. The likes push the video out to the world for more people to see, so please do that. I tell 4 true crime stories a week here on YouTube. I tell 1 over on Instagram, 1 on Facebook, and a few throughout the week over on TikTok. All of my socials are linked in the description below in my link tree, but I'm making a true crimer literally everywhere, so it's easy to find. So yeah, please follow and subscribe wherever you so choose. Thank you. Next, if you have a case you would like me to cover, please email me. The information is also below in the description. Check my case list first, which is in my link tree below, and scroll through the list. I know it's a lot. There's like 4,600 cases on there. You can search on your phone and on a computer to find it quicker. And if you don't find the name, please then email it to me. Just the name, where it happened, and when it happened, and I will eventually add it to my list, I promise. If you see the name already, please do not email it to me. I do get inundated with a lot of duplicates. It's on my list, so I will cover it at one point. I pick my cases as randomly as I possibly can. So it'll happen. I just can't tell you when. Next, if you want to support me in any way, I do sell merch. I sell t-shirts and hoodies and wine glasses and stuff like that. I know my buddy Adam, who does everything for the merch, he is working on a couple new things, new shirts, designs or whatever. So hopefully those will be out soon. But we do ship internationally. That means the whole world can get my merch. You learned something here today that you probably definitely didn't know, that internationally meant the world. You're welcome. So yeah, do that if you like. Okay. And lastly, if you have a Discord account and you want to join my Discord server, it's also linked below. Please be over the age of 18 or you'll be kicked out of that joint harshly, with harsh words. It's a really quiet, very chill Discord. It's not busy. We just chat and conversate, talk about all sorts of things like movies and TV shows and true crime and other things. So feel free to join if you like. Anyway, that is it for this video. True crime, a rooney dooney 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 ding dong. So, like I close every single video with the utmost consistency, I always do the same exact thing. The second half of this video, we are going to take an adventure. And we are going to explore the origins of ladies' underoos. And why do they need them? So, let's get started.